Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Brian Tague, and today we are joined by someone who helps companies move from big ideas to real execution, Jessica Douthit of the BTCS group. Jessica works directly with CEOs, COOs, and operational leaders to solve complex organizational challenges, everything from workflow optimization and automation to reporting, communication, and scaling systems for long-term success. Jessica, it's great to have you here, so let's jump in.
Thanks, Brian. So good to be here with you today.
All right. Well, thank you. I love talking to smart, operationally minded business people. So I am more excited. Don't tell anybody else who's a guest on these shows to talk to you today, just because I think these conversations can go in all sorts of directions. So how I want to start with how you got to where you're at. What's your backstory? Because there's so many people that are stuck in today's business days and trying to make money and just burned out. Or how did you get to where you're at? Like, what is your progression?
Well, it was definitely not any sort of straight line, but I started out in the biotech industry as a project manager, and then I was working in a translational research department. So what we were doing was helping innovate the technology with research departments rather than with pharma or anything like that, trying to get the newest tests to see if they had proof of concept. Anyways, I was a project manager. I was just really organized. And then as we had to analyze huge amounts of data, things would keep coming and getting bottlenecked. And I was like, there's got to be a better way to analyze this data. We can't be copying and pasting tons of information for each, patient information. And so I started recording macros in Excel to try and do the copying and pasting faster. And my dad actually wrote a ton of VBA code in the past. So then we'd have these conversations like, how do I optimize this? How do I do that? And soon enough, this Excel doc became a template for the organization because multiple departments, the pharma departments and stuff, they were all doing this same reformatting. And that's when it started like getting really exciting for me. I've always liked technology, but I was like, wait a minute, being organized helps projects go up smoothly, right? But there's more to it than that. There's process included. And if you can make your process more effective, you can improve the results of your project. So that's where my project manager brain went. And I started doing it with all sorts of projects throughout the company, and then went to a couple other biotechs, and also on the side started about 4 other businesses. So I was like, there's got to be, I was always kind of wanting to do something that was a bit more independent, so that I could have a little bit more flexibility in my schedule as I ended up having kids. That was my vision. Now I have 2, so it's nice to have some flexibility. And so then I started in consulting about 6 years ago. I was talking to my friend and she was like, oh, we need some project management support. Again, it was all around project management. So helped out with her company, and I was just doing data validation for them. And I was like, there's a faster way to do this. Started doing it. And now we are in multiple companies helping them find better, faster ways to do things so they can get their valuable time back and leave the monotonous tasks to technology.
I love that, because there are so many people that don't understand what their highest and best use of time is. And they get caught in those mundane tasks that take time, that are repetitive. And they're such skilled people. They're such skilled people, but they get hung up on a copy and a paste thing, or making this social thing, or whatever it is, when they can be out client facing or analyzing facing or putting their brain to work. And you truly then do solve a problem every day for so many people who might not even realize they have a problem.
That's the biggest thing, is that what we find a lot of the times when a manager will ask us to come in and look at a process, the individual contributors actually struggle they're like, this is how I do it. And we're like, oh, have you thought of it this way? And they'll come up with a million reasons actually why you shouldn't do it that way, because this is the way they've always done it. It's the way they've learned it. It's the way they've trained people on. And it's not a bad thing, because for them to try and learn a new way feels less efficient than the way they've done it. They're really good at doing it that way. So it's a tough change management component of every single project we work on, is bringing people along for the journey so they're excited about the change. They see what it will do for them rather than feeling like you're doing a change to them.
So how do you overcome that then? Like, you bring the people up, but how do you overcome those old dogs, right?
I mean, sometimes it's really about the small wins first. So even though you might see the potential of bigger transformation from an outsider looking in, or even maybe a manager can see it, sometimes it's about showing really small proof of concept wins. Um, that's one way of doing it. The other way is actually having them help identify something a little bit outside their personal purview.
Okay. And when you say bringing in the managers, and you're talking about their staff, not on your side. You're talking on their side. Okay. So to get essentially buy-in from the other employees or the staff or the other influencers within the company.
Yeah, because for us, you can implement technology anyway to Sunday, but the people have to use that technology. And if they're not going to use it effectively, you have wasted your money in putting any investment into technology. And so it really isn't, people are like, oh, innovation, you just put technology. And that is, of course, a wonderful component of it. And it's a huge component. But unless you bring the people along the journey and figure out where that mesh between people, culture for the company, and technology blend, you're going to miss your opportunity to capitalize on your ROI.
Yeah. And you as a consultant coming in and talking to ideally the wrong person, which is sometimes the CEO or a too high up, they don't even realize that the left hand doesn't necessarily talk to the right hand when you go and implement one system or one change. You need to make sure that entire workflow is synchronous within itself. So I love that approach, is to get the buy-in from the people. The other challenge I imagine you have is the monetary challenge, right? So, not to role play here, but hey, my business isn't broken. I make money. We all make money. Everybody's happy. But you see the potential in what this business could be doing more. And if their goals are to make more money, they have to adapt to the change. How do you overcome the return on investment risk? Because what they're doing is taking a risk with you to get them to the next level. Besides the starting small, because that's different. The land and expand works. That's awesome because you're building the trust, the relationship, proof of concept. And I like land and expand, but what about just the bigger ROI to get them to really bite off a big piece?
Yeah, it's a good question. And actually, over the years, we've been brought into projects with different stakeholders. So sometimes it's more of an individual contributor hiring us just to almost like an extension of their staff, right? Hey, we just need you to help project manage this, and then we start seeing opportunity and sharing it that way. Other times, there's a leader, the CEO or a COO, who brings us in. They say, hey, we know we need to do something, but we're not sure. You need to go talk to the team, right? So they understand the value, but they just want somebody to identify the what, right? But ultimately, what we were finding is that we would have findings from our process mapping or something, and nobody would take action. So it would just end at this process mapping sort of opportunity recognition, and they wouldn't have either the bandwidth or the resource to implement it, or it was a great idea, but another department had another idea, another department had another idea. And what do you actually spend your money on? What's actually going to make a difference? So people end up working on projects that don't matter, or they have analysis paralysis and they work on no projects. We've had clients that do both. And so what we did is we actually developed what we call our Streamline Pro methodology, and it takes people through 4 steps in order for them to find clarity to bridge the gap between their strategy and their execution path. What that does is we look at what's the area of potential through a conversation with them. Like, we're not making it up. We talk about we have a workshop where we work with them to figure out their top gut instinct ones that need to happen. But the value is in the process calculator, where we map out, hey, how does it happen today at a high level? Sometimes that's through assumption of what people think. Sometimes it's through detailed process mapping, depending. And then we say, okay, where can technology help and what will it help with? And you start just cutting down where the time savings will be. You obviously get efficiency that way, or projected efficiency that ties to a dollar amount of people's time compared to the labor of what that person would normally be doing for that task.
Yep.
And so it gives you an estimated time savings equated to $1. Then you put in what you think the investment will be for those things that you've identified as opportunities, and you're able to show them what the ROI is before they even make the decision. And then the final piece is mapping that ROI against all the other portfolio ideas and seeing which one is most important or which one moves the needle the most to give you that higher profit in the long run. The other component to that can be tricky is people are like, well, I'm paying that person anyways. So the time savings isn't really savings. I'm not like firing the person or using half the person. And so that piece is where I think process optimization can be a little bit of a harder sell, because you're going to recoup that investment in time by increasing your capacity. Sometimes you get a cut cost because you're changing out a software that's cheaper, but a lot of the times it's in your time savings. And that's really accumulated over a couple of years that you don't have to hire another person instead.
This is awesome. So these companies, let's talk about your avatar. Who are these companies? Because these are, I mean, what you're describing sounds like they have to be somewhat of a decent size. And you talk about small and medium sized companies, but what is your definition of your scope of people that you help? Because you never know who's listening here, and they're like, I'm calling Jessica, I need her in my business tomorrow or yesterday. So like, what is the size of these businesses that you're helping?
I would say most of the size actually varies quite a bit, but probably our sweet spot is between 50 and like 350 people.
Okay.
Really, it's more about what the company is experiencing versus size, because sometimes departments and large organizations can experience the same aspect, which is for the smaller companies, they're just developing process and now they're getting ready to commercialize, or they're doing a V2 of their product or something like that. And they know they need to be better. And they just don't have bandwidth because their team is focused on the core competencies of the business and not the process improvement, but they need that done for a shorter period of time. So those are the smaller groups. The other groups are something feels wrong in their process. Like we've had some clients refer to it as like something feels leaky in our process. Like we're missing things are falling through the cracks. And they need like fresh eyes on it to understand, because when they go to their staff, each person has a different story and they're struggling to make a cohesive understanding of what it is. And so that's another place. And that we've worked with really large organizations and specific departments for.
Okay. And then you go in, so you have these potential clients, so to speak. You go in, is it just you? Are you meeting with them face to face? Are you doing Zooms and webinars? Like, how are you getting to really peel back that onion and understand what's going on? Like, what's the process from potential client acquisition through I'm starting and we're going to start making changes? Because there's a buildup phase in there. So who's involved in that, and how long does that take?
Every single one of our projects has a technical project manager, one or many developers, depending on what technology is involved, and then a solutions architect. So somebody who's really trying to put all the pieces together, not just from the process flow and the technology, but also where people and culture intertwine with that to make sure the employee experience is still just as good as the business results that you're going to get from it. Anyway, so with every engagement, we will, specifically the ones where that, hey, we have a process we need to assess, we'll start out with a high level understanding of the process through an interview, and then we'll map that out and start going detailed by detailed with different people who are sort of experts in that department. A lot of the time, Zoom is perfectly sufficient because it's a screen share or whatever, but we do biotech projects as well. So that you need to go in the lab. So we'll go in person where it's needed so that we can follow the process and really see, because sometimes people articulate one thing, but when you shadow them, a different thing is happening. So we balance that depending on what the workflow and the process is. And that's where we start mapping each detailed process with hands-on time, what potential systems are being used or not used, and any gap analysis that we see by connecting all those process maps. And then that gap analysis goes through the strategic prioritization process that I talked about at the beginning, where we're mapping out how any of those gaps, how meaningful those gaps are as something to fix. Because we all have things like I think of it with my house projects all the time. Like there's a zillion maintenance projects to do in a home. It's the same with the business. Like there's always ways to improve. We can't do everything at once. But which ones, like if I don't clean the baseboards another week, we'll probably be all right. Right. So those kinds of things.
With this dripping faucet that I don't really know how to fix or what to do with, I can't turn a blind eye on that because that costs me money every day. Right. So I love that analogy. That's really cool. So okay, so let's talk about Jessica for a second because this is fascinating. I love how articulated you are and how your brain works, and it's just brilliant. You come from the space; it's your niche. You know this area, and then you can just continue to just project management on steroids, like to help people and provide and show results. You're not just doing this for fun. You're adding value, and it's usually in the monetary sense, but it's also ultimately relates in the culture, positive culture fit and all that. So let's back up before your biotech days. Where did you grow up? Like, where did your brain get like this? Were there childhood moments that you think clicked? Like, how you mentioned your dad for a second, but like, how did you get to be who you are? Because that's, to me, is equally as fascinating.
Gosh, I don't really know. So I guess we'll go back to the beginning and see where the points are. But I was actually born in South Africa. So my family is South African, and we moved to America when I was 6 years old. I have two sisters, one who's 3 years older and one who's 4 years younger. So maybe there's middle child benefits in optimization there. But yeah, so we moved to America, and yeah, I went to school, was an athlete. I played soccer, softball, basketball. I don't know where like the process optimization really came in, to be honest.
Did you play sports competitively or did you just play recreationally?
I played competitive like club sports for soccer and softball.
So that's a very commonality when I talk to business owners, CEOs, high level influencers.
Yeah.
The competitive sports is a big driver in that. So, not to break this down, I'm not a psychologist, but I see a lot of patterns. Okay, so that could be one step there.
Yeah, I think like so funny. There's an interesting one thing I do think of there is that I don't know about like process improvement. I feel like that really came in maybe in my college experiences, but in soccer, the mission for BTCS, the reason I started a business in the first place was because I wanted the opportunity to have flexibility in my schedule, but also I wanted the opportunity to give back and as a business owner be like autonomous about how that happened, because I really truly believe like when you help other businesses or business owners succeed, communities come up and we like everybody wins. Yep. From small businesses winning. And so that's why we want to help smaller businesses and mid-sized businesses achieve the results faster, because if they get what their product is, it's only going to help their customers, the communities, and everyone that they impact, right? It's a ripple effect. Yep. So coming back to soccer, when I played soccer, I was a center midfielder. And so I would always, if there was like somebody on the defense who, moved up the field for summer, I would go play defense. I was always like filling the gap that was needed on the field. And I feel like that's kind of what happens in process optimization. You're finding the gaps and filling it with something that's needed at that time to make the field better, to make the goal better, the project better. So I think that might be an element or component of it.
So let's go there, because let's take that more granular. Two things. You're as a soccer player, you're constantly assessing the movement, the field, the ball, the elements. So whether you go in and fill in for somebody or you're anticipating the next move or play or cross or whatever it is, you're constantly processing the field and the play. So that's step one. The other thing that I also think helps drive these brains is you don't just go out to play soccer for fun. You want to always get better, or any competitive athlete or travel athlete wants to get better. So they're putting in that work. They're working on their form. They're working on their shot. They're working on whatever. And what do you have to do? You have to analyze every little micro movement or food you eat and drink, and you're constantly building your own algorithm, which ultimately results in good business. I don't know. I'm not a professional at this, but I think that could be part of how and why you're driven to where you're at today.
The other thing that was impactful is in eighth grade, I got stress fractures in my L5. So I'd been this three sport athlete from like, third grade till middle school. And then I couldn't play sports. And they said, you might never even be able to play sports again. And I was like, oh gosh, like, as a kid, that's your identity. Like that's what I was known for. And now what am I going to do? And so I tried out for the school play, didn't get a part, but I ended up doing sound and lighting. I taught myself guitar, taught myself piano, taught myself photography. So I basically killed time by trying new things. And I think that's the piece that's really fundamental to what I do now. I'm constantly trying to figure out what's new technology that can be applied, what's the nuance that can be done here. And I think that comes from the experimentation I had, I was forced into, but ended up being a really nice benefit. And then my back healed so I could play sports again. So it was a double benefit.
I love that, because think about it. You as an entrepreneur are always chasing and learning and what's the next best thing, right? To always be growing, like you just said. But as a competitive soccer player or a three sport athlete, you don't have a free time. You know that. You wake up, you inhale a bowl of cereal, you go to school, you go to sports, you come home, you inhale more cereal or whatever you do, and then you go to, I know, and you go to bed. So when you can't play sports, the idea of sitting on the couch and watching TV or playing on a computer, like that doesn't exist. You got to be busy doing something. So you learn the guitar, you learn the lighting and all of that stuff. So again, I that this is what fascinates me about this podcast, is seeing these successful, amazing people and where they came from and how they got there. But anyway, so back to business. So you've evolved into this great helper. Um, what's next for you? Because you want to be learning, growing, and challenging, and you're doing great things and helping people, and you're giving back movement, which I love and respect and can appreciate so much. What's next? Where do you go from here?
I mean, for us, we started out in project management and then process optimization, reporting using Power BI to report on the processes so that you could control and monitor them, right? And now in the last year plus, AI has become such an important player in that. And so this is the component that I'm still navigating, at scale. Like we've done projects where we're implementing AI with clients, but it's really about figuring out it for twofold. One is how to use it internally to be more efficient. Like we always want to practice what we're preaching and stuff, but also how do you scale it in a way that is still very much culture and people minded? And also it's a little bit of education too, because what we see is a lot of executives are sort of in a hype stage with AI, and they're like, AI can solve that, right? And they think it will just be like a custom GPT or something. Like it'll take a couple hours and it's going to solve our entire operational backlog from 20 years ago. And I think that's the tricky part, is that AI is amazing, but it's also not a magic bullet. And it also isn't always the best tool for, it's not always like a nail when you need a screw or something. And sometimes simple automation or micro automations are a better approach than a huge chatbot that can do all the things. But there's good uses for that too. It's just knowing when to use what. It's just another tool. It's not the only tool. Yeah, and I think that's a lot of what we have to play. And so, what's next component is a lot of education. So, next year, we're going to do a lot of stuff to really sort of help people understand process optimization and the bridge between strategy, technology, people, and culture, and really sort of make it its like a new sort of realm of thinking of it. So we're doing a lot more content generation and the Streamline Pro program, the workshops that we're really trying to get people, because that is the first entry. When you don't know what to do, when you're like, I know I need to do something, but I don't know where to start, the workshop is such a great place for people to start.
I look at it as so AI is it's cyclical, not in the form of AI, it's brand new, but it's
Yeah.
cyclical to new disruptors or new industries or just to industries in general, right? So real estate is a perfect example. Is I want to be an investor in real, or I want to be an investor. Well, what do you want to invest in? Stocks and bonds and the gold? Do you want to invest in real estate? And then the micro markets in real estate. Do you want to be commercial? Do you want to be short-term rentals, long terms? Do you want to flip? Do you want to do tax? Like there's all sorts of investing you can, and they all have different strategies. And AI falls into that same category as what part of AI do you want to use? Are you using LLMs? Are you using AI agents? Are you using workflows, custom, autonomy, whatever it's going to be? There's all sorts of different AI, but you're right. People are just like, I want to do AI. I want it in my business because it's hype. It's hype. It's the
Yeah.
buzz. You can't turn around without somebody talking about AI, but there's so many facets to it, and you've got to apply the saw to the tree, not the hammer. Like that's
Yeah.
the thing.
And there was a study that came out at the end of 2024, so I'm not sure the latest stat, but it was saying that 70% of AI projects fail because it's somebody was really excited to use AI, but they weren't really understanding what problem
Yep.
they were trying to solve. They were like, I think we could use AI here. And then it wasn't actually, I mean, probably not the right tool. And the other huge component of the reasons it failed is the people and process were not
Totally.
adopted. The people either didn't know how to use it or weren't a part of it, or the process wasn't fit for it.
Yep.
And so those two things you got to figure out first. You got to, before you implement AI, you need to figure out what components of people do we need to be engaged still. And I know you're going to need less people over time the more AI you implement. I understand that. But at the same time, I feel that as a company, any business, it's a moral obligation to ensure that people that you've invited to be a part of this journey with you are also getting some sort of validation in what they're providing to society, right? And so if there's a balance between like, hey, where do they need to provide their special touch because only a human can, or we only want our customers to have that human inner experience, versus where can AI? And if you do that well, it's going to be much more successful for any project you implement with AI because you're going to have brought the people along and preserved the customer experience where it needs to be preserved, or enhanced it with the technology that can do that too.
Jessica, you're absolutely brilliant. I love the way your brain works. You're so smart, and I'm so glad to have you here. If there's people listening that say, I need a Jessica in my life, how can they reach you? What are your handles, your email? What do you want, your websites? What do you want to share so people can contact you to help with this improvement of their business?
Yeah. BTCS Group website is www.btcsgroup.com. But my email is very simple. It's just jessica@btcsgroup.com. And then Instagram and LinkedIn, same, just BTCS Group. So it's simple to find us, and we're always excited to learn about people's processes. I always say I'm a process nerd. So even if there's not an opportunity to help you, I love to hear about what other people are working on and the processes they're investigating. So call even if you don't know.
You are amazing. Thank you so much for being on the show. I think you're going to provide a lot of value to a lot of people listening. So I wish you the best. I look forward to keeping in touch with you for sure and seeing where you take things and all the people you're helping along the way.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me, Brian. I appreciate it. It was fun.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye.